Hi, everybody. I'm reading this book again. I've read it a couple of times, but I want to share some of what this book says about Jesus Malverde. And the reason I'm doing this is because several of you have messaged me asking me about him, and there's really not too much available in English. There are a couple of YouTube videos on him in English. All you have to do is do a search and you'll find them. Good info. But this is going to be long. It's about 10 pages here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, it's about 12 pages long. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you a roundabout on here. So, let's start with an excerpt here. It says, I'll sing you the story of a very well-known man, Jesus Malverde, by name. A generous bandit, he never knew fear, since he robbed just anywhere. He attacked stagecoaches and helped the poor. That's an excerpt right here in the book. And it says, so the first verses of La Entrega de Malverde, the betrayal of Malverde, by Arturo Franco. Only one of several songs that folk composers have written about Malverde. Many of these songs have been commercially recorded. Malverde is indeed famous. His shrine is included in an English language. The heck was that? Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. His shrine is included in an English language guidebook to the state of Sinaloa, published by the state. Journalists have published articles about him in a score of newspapers, even in Esquire magazine. And unlike the other 5 saints this book deals with, historians cannot reach any consensus that the man ever existed. That issue is supremely unimportant to his present-day devotees. However, and especially to those responsible for all the journalistic attention paid him in recent years, for whether or not he ever existed in history, Jesus Malverde lives today as, among other things, the patron of and protector of los narcotraficantes, the people engaged in the international drug trade. Okay, we're not going to deny it. Those who affirm his reality say that he was a bandit active in the area around Culiacan, Sinaloa, in the early years of the 20th century. Jesus Juarez Mazo, born on December 24th, 1870. Capricorn. Some versions of his life say that he was born in Jalisco and brought to Sinaloa as a child. Others that he was a native to the area around Mocorito in Sinaloa, a town to the north of Culiacan. Sorry, doing my best here. He was given the nickname of Malverde, Bad Green One, because he hid in the brush, the green, in order to accomplish his robberies. A more fanciful version has it that he would disguise himself by tying banana leaves all over his body. Author Fabricio Mejia Madrid repeats this version and goes on to say that it wasn't until the 1920s that Juarez, the bandit, entered legend as Malverde. Another Mexican author suggests that the color green itself is traditionally associated with evil. However, the name came to be, and apodos, or nicknames, are extremely common in Mexico, often better known than the individual's Christian or family names. It stuck. Jesus Malverde he became, and Jesus Malverde he remains. Okay, now sit tight. His devotees will tell you that Malverde was a generous bandit. He robbed from the rich and gave to the poor. Some skeptics believe that Malverde, as he is understood today, is an artifact, a combination of the exploits and stories of two other Sinaloans. One, celebrated in song and story, was Heraclio Bernal, who flourished in late 19th century Sinaloa until his capture and execution in 1888. He waged war on wealthy hacendados, or landowners, and in 1885 signed a document proclaiming the power of Don Porfirio and the authorities of Sinaloa to be illegitimate. Some of the details of his career find echoes in the Malverde legends. The other was Felipe Bachomo, a Mayo Indian revolutionary leader in the period of 1913 to 1915. Bachomo's theater of operations was in northern Sinaloa, near the Rio Fuerte. That's a river. While neither of these men were strictly bandits, they did support their causes by robbing the wealthy and were viewed by the authorities as mere lawbreakers. Each is said to have been betrayed by one of his followers. This is one explanation of Malverde. Another is that the Malverde did exist, but only as an invention of Sinaloa's governor Francisco Cañedo, created by him to keep wealthy hacienda owners in line. The Malverde legend, however, persists in opposing him to the governor. On one occasion, my light source went out. Hold on. That was cool. Okay, on one occasion, it is said, when Cañedo had a price on Malverde's head, the bandit broke into the governor's mansion, stole his sword, and wrote on the wall, Jesus M. was here. Neither the guards nor the dogs in the mansion noticed his presence. Another version tells us that Malverde worked as a mason and therefore knew his way around all the buildings in town. When the governor offered a pardon, the bandit, if he dared to rob the governor's mansion, Malverde easily crept in, stole the sword, and left his message. Or the governor offered a pardon in exchange for not robbing the mansion, and Malverde showed his contempt by breaking in and stealing the governor's daughter. Although she was returned unharmed, the governor swore bitter enmity against him, shades of Robin Hood and Zorro. And it was the governor's forces, many say, that finally caused Malverde's death on May 3rd, 1909. But once again, accounts differ. Some say he was betrayed by his own compadre, Valdemar Lopez. Others say that his henchmen cut off his feet and dragged him to town in order to collect a 10,000 peso reward. Yet another version has it that when Malverde was dying of a gangrenous wound in his leg, he instructed his partner to kill him, cut off his head, collect the reward offered by the governor, and distribute the money to the poor. After death, his body was hung from a mesquite tree and left there as a warning on the governor Cañedo's orders. People were afraid to cut him down and bury him for fear they too would be shot by the dreaded Rurales, Don Porfirio's bloody efficient rural police. Cañedo himself died a little more than a month after Malverde. His funeral is said to have been attended by the major chiefs of the Sinaloa's Chinese opium gangs. Malverde dead was not, however, Malverde forgotten. Accounts differ as to precisely what his first miracle was. One writer states that he helped a farmer or an old woman find a lost cow. A more common story repeatedly told by Eligio Gonzalez, the man who took care of Malverde's shrine in Culiacan in the 1990s, is this. A friend of Malverde's was drinking some mules loaded with gold and silver to the coast. Was driving some mules, not drinking some mules loaded with gold and silver to the coast from Canelas in the inland state of Durango. The mules had gone astray one night, and their owner was understandably eager to find them again. At the time, Malverde's bones were still hanging from the mesquite tree, and the governor had issued orders that nobody cut them down. So the man asked Malverde to help him. Next morning, the mules and their cargo were found safe and sound. The grateful arriero, or muleteer, cut Malverde's bones down and quietly buried them in the same cemetery where the governor is buried. To this day, according to the story, nobody knows for certain the whereabouts of Malverde's remains. As one might expect, we also hear other stories of Malverde's burial. One is that he was buried under the mesquite tree. One writer suggests that because Malverde's remains were not permitted to be buried, people placed rocks on his body until it was covered. Wow, can you imagine? One can also relate the pile of rocks or pebbles at Malverde's death site to the northwestern Mexican custom of erecting a cross and often a rock pile as well on the site where some person met a sudden death. Passers-by traditionally say a prayer for the repose of the soul of the dead person and add a rock to the pile. I didn't know that's where that came from. However, the rocks got there. There is supposed to have been a pile of rocks surmounted by a metal cross at Malverde's death site long before a chapel was built. Okay. The site looked like that in 1956 when Sinaloan journalist Ernesto Alvarez Nolasco wrote an article on Malverde in Original Journal. He described the metal cross on a pile of rocks with several smaller crosses placed around it, and offerings of candles, silver milagros. Milagros are like little charms, and they're in different shapes like eyes, legs, arms, pets, hearts, whatever. They're like little miracles is what they're called. Flowers and wreaths. He also described an evolution of the death site shrine from a simple pile of rocks, each rock representing a prayer for Malverde's soul on the part of a passerby, to a place of petitions. In his account, the first person to be posthumously helped by the bandido generoso, or the generous bandit, was an older woman named Tomasa. Malverde appeared to her and told her where a clay pot filled with gold coins was buried. In exchange, all he asked of her was a visit to his death site. Word of this miracle spread rapidly, said Alvarez, and the site rapidly became a place of petitions. The author of the article did not mention the underworld as participating in the devotion to Malverde, just the poor. The death site itself was out in the monte, the wilderness, far from Culiacan's city limits. It was of little importance, just a little cross where the passers-by would leave little stones. According to one man who remembered it from his childhood, the first people to pray there were mostly muchachas de la vida jalente, or prostitutes. As Culiacan's population grew after the middle of the 20th century, the site came to be within the limits of the expanding city. Then the state government decided to build a new state office building on the land that had been used for Malverde's shrine. Strong protests to the plan lasted for 2 years, with the local media taking sides. I have been told that after the building was finished, the glass in the windows on the side where Malverde's shrine had been kept breaking. Finally, the state provided land for Malverde, where the shrine now stands, as well as land for the rock pile. The moving of the rock pile was in itself pretty exciting. All of Culiacans gathered to watch. One account, right? Like, they'd probably be like, oh my God, we're going to see his body. One account reports that the stones jumped like popcorn where the bulldozer tried to shift them. The bulldozer operator had to get drunk to get his courage up before attacking the stones. According to accounts of the incident, and the bulldozer itself broke down as soon as it touched the grave. The present shrine to Malverde was built in 1980, at least partly with the state money. It replaced a much smaller chapel on the same site. In recent years, a number of journalists and other authors have visited the Malverde Capilla and published on it. They pay great attention to the story of the late Eligio Gonzalez, builder of the self-appointed guardian of the chapel and the source of much Malverde lore. Gonzalez credited Malverde with having saved his life when driving a passenger truck in the Sierra. He was attacked by robbers and shot 4 times. He credited his survival to Malverde and dedicated the rest of his life to serving his cause. He built a chapel in the 1980s and used the money offerings left there for the support of the poor in the form of free burials and the distribution of food, toys, and other goods. He died in 2002. One interesting detail mentioned by one source is the presence of a number of small rocks in the chapel. Malverde was a thief, he was told, and therefore one gets his attention by stealing a rock from his capilla. If one gets the desired miracle, one returns that rock and brings another. It's like take a penny, give a penny. The Northwest Mexican tradition of rockpile memorials persists with a new twist, appropriate to the occasion. More of the book is going into the narco culture and they're associated with Malverde, but I'm just going to let you assume what they're saying and move on. And what does Sinaloans think of Malverde? The day of my visit to the chapel, I interviewed 4 Culiacan intellectuals, a professional historian, an archivist, an actor, and an author. They seem rather proud of him. Sinaloans are an irreverent and independent people, the director of State Historical Archives told me. Malverde serves as an appropriate symbol of Sinaloan identity and also an appropriate supernatural individual for the very poor. Malverde, he said, demands nothing and sets up no moral rules, but simply gives what is needed. He even ventured to link Malverde's name with possible prehistoric nature deities, for example, the god of Pitahaya cactus. The historian reminded me that the Malverde of legend was a bandito generoso who served the poor, a generous bandit. Malverde today, in his spirit, helps the very same segment of Mexican society, those at the bottom of the social and economic heap. The actor reaffirmed the appeal of Malverde as a supernatural being, saying that he made no demands and asked for no confession. He simply was, as he had been, a generous bandit. The actor went on to suggest an idea I find fascinating, that by creating a situation in which wealthy drug dealers give large sums of money to the chapel to be redistributed among the poor, Malverde is doing precisely what he did in his life. Finally, the novelist told me that he remembers Malverde's grave and attendant rock pile as existing in a very rough barrio in the 1950s, a ghetto. Come on, light source. Sorry. Okay. A barrio into which he and his friends did not dare to go. Malverde, he feels, achieved the true mythic status he has today when the government tried to move the site in order to erect an official building there. Resistance to government insensitivity is always popular, and through his ghostly resistance, Malverde achieved the popularity he has today. All 4 of these men agreed that whether or not Malverde has actually existed as a bandit at the turn of the century, he exists today as an individual to be reckoned with. Another common theme in the discussion was the comparison of Malverde with other Mexican Robin Hood types from the Porfiriato, such as Chucho el Roto in Mexico City, Heraclio Bernal in Sinaloa, and Pancho Villa in Chihuahua. A final common theme was the contrast between a Catholic Church that imposes moral standards on people and Malverde, the spirit who simply gives. Now, we're getting to a part called Prayer Cards and Amulets, and here's a picture I want to show you. The rest of the section kind of goes into what it means to be a canonized saint and how Malverde was different because he don't know if he was like an actual person. But I'm just going to read the part that I think most of you would be interested in, and hope you enjoy it. Jesus Malverde is depicted as a man in his 30s, perhaps with black hair, dark eyes, and thin black mustache. He wears a kerchief, usually black, around his neck, with the ends hanging down in front of his shirt like a necktie. His shirt appears to be Western style, with flat pockets. I've seen two standard Malverde representations, one in full-length drawing and the other a bust. In the full-length portrayals, the bandit stands with his hands behind his back and a noose around his neck. The other end of the rope has been thrown over a tree branch above his head. A bunch of cattails may be seen on his left. The trunk of his hanging tree is to the right. The image usually appears on a prayer card where his amulets and some cards display photographs of the bust of Malverde. These busts display a similar image but with no noose in evidence, and the kerchief and pocket flaps are usually black. Elijah Wald relates a story that appears to go far towards explaining how this image, an image, mind you, of a man who may never have existed, became fixed in the public mind. After the present chapel was built, people started flocking to it. As is usual with Mexican pilgrims, many wanted something, some image of Malverde, to take home with them, perhaps to put in their altars. But no such image existed. So one Carlos Garcia asked around for a photograph of Malverde so he could have busts made in the great commercial crafts centered in Guadalajara. Not finding any photos, although there was a rumor that one such existed, he asked a craftsman to make him a bust. Garcia felt that Malverde had been young, good-looking, and with light skin. As the great ranchera singers Jorge Negrete and Pedro Infante were extremely popular at the time, he requested that the bust resemble those men. He was pleased with the result and made his first order of 200 busts. These sold in a week, so he ordered 500 more, and then 1,000. Then Eligio Gonzalez, guardian of the capilla, started ordering his own busts. Today, Malverde busts are a big business and available in many cities in the United States, as well as all over northwestern Mexico. I have seen what appear to be the results of several different molds, but all with the same characteristics: black hair, mustache, light skin, black neckerchief, and pocket flaps. I do not know whether or not the hanging picture was derived from the busts. It seems possible. Of course, we also find another version of this story. Caretaker Eligio Gonzalez told one writer that he himself had ordered the bust made using as a model an old photograph he had acquired from the woman who had told him about Malverde in the first place, Doña Amadita. She showed him the picture, and later on he ordered the images made according to what he remembered seeing. The images of Malverde appear to be a multitude of objects. The two most common are colored photographs of the bust and prayer cards that show the full-length drawing. The cards with the drawing have the words, Di tu voluntad, ayudad a mi gente en el nombre de Dios. Say your desire, help my people in the name of God. The following prayer is often printed on the card. I'm going to show it to you if you want to take a screenshot. There's the bottom. That's in English and Spanish. And there's the rest of it, which I'm pretty sure you can Google it. So for the sake of time and my Spanish sucking, we'll read it in English. The true prayer of the spirit of Malverde. Today, lying before your cross, O Malverde, my Lord, I ask mercy of you, and that you lighten my sorrow. You who dwell in heaven and are very close to God, hear the sufferings of this humble sinner. O miraculous Malverde, O Malverde, my Lord, Grant me this favor and fill my soul with joy. Give me health, Lord. Give me rest. Give me well-being, and I will be happy. In very specific language, this prayer, which has the form of an alabanza, or hymn of praise, describes Malverde as being in heaven and in the presence of God. In other words, as far as his devotees are concerned, Jesus Malverde is a saint. The whole issue of sainthood will be discussed later in the chapter, like I told you, because they describe how one becomes a saint. For now, suffice it to say, there is very little chance of Malverde's ever being elevated to sainthood by the official Catholic Church. This is, of course, of no importance whatsoever to his devotees, especially to those who believe themselves to have been the beneficiaries of Malverde's miracles. Photographs of Malverde's bust, often as it appears on the altar in his chapel in Culiacan, adorn a wide variety of cards, scapulars, and amulets. These latter are often framed in braided leather or plastic and hung from loops of the same materials. I have seen large numbers of these highly popular items at market stands in several Sonoran cities, and even being hawked on the street corners by young boys. Vendors and others have told me that at least some of the braiding of the work of prisoners trying to earn a little pocket money. While some of the amulets only contain a picture of Malverde, others have an image of San Judas, or St. Jude, or the Virgen de Guadalupe, or Virgin of Guadalupe, on the other side. In swap meets in large U.S. cities, one finds other Malverde memorabilia, gold pendants, caps, even silk shirts bearing Malverde's familiar face. One vendor's stall had a sign saying, Malverde es amor. Malverde is love. A silk shirt in my possession, purchased at a Phoenix swap meet, had Malverde's face wreathed in stylized marijuana leaves on the front, back, and sleeves. We also find one other important kind of Malverde memorabilia, recorded musical tributes. Visitors to the chapel since the early 1990s have mentioned the availability of cassettes bearing songs dedicated to Malverde. Many of these songs are corridos, the story songs of Mexican folk expression. Although corridos have celebrated the deeds of bandits and other rebels against society, I'm sorry that keeps happening. Since the 19th century, the form has undergone a recent reflorescence with the popularity of the narco corrido. The tributes to Malverde fit neatly into this category, of course. At the time of my visit to Malverde's chapel, only one recording was available in both CD and cassette form. The cassette bore no information concerning either songs or artists. The CD carried an artist list, but no song titles. The artists listed included such well-known contemporary groups as Los Incomparables de Tijuana and Miguel, and they also included Los Serranitos de Malverde and Los Hilgueritos de Malverde. Malverde's Little Highlanders and Malverde's Little Songbirds. The 26 songs included devotional pieces addressed to Malverde as corridos describing his life. Many well-known groups who sing narco corridos will include an occasional Malverde piece in their recorded repertoires. Such pieces may well make up the sources of this home-produced CD. And from here on, it's just talking about like shrines along the border. Here's another picture. This says, back wall of a roadside shrine in Mexico's Highway 2, just east of Agua Prieta, Sonora, January 2002. And then that's when it goes on to talk about saints in the church and how they become canonized. So I hope you liked it. I know it was a long one, but once again, this is the book I'm referencing. It goes into a whole lot of detail, and I hope you enjoyed it. As far as offerings, how to set up an altar, all that, I mean, I'm sure that you'll find that information online, but like I said, there's not too much info available in English, so I would suggest, do the research, try to find it in Spanish. From what I remember, he likes most of what a folk saint would like, which is flowers, coins, water, an alcoholic beverage, bread, rice, beans. But don't quote me, because I'm still doing my own digging on Malverde. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.